Last chapter, we went over division and multiplication of fractions. So this chapter, we're going to study addition and subtraction of fractions. And to begin with, we're going to do addition and subtraction of like fractions. So what are like fractions? So if I have 1/5 plus, let's say, 7/5, these are called like fractions because the denominators are the same. Now, suppose we had to add 1/4 plus 7/10. Now, these are not like fractions. They're unlike fractions because the denominators are different. Now, let's see what exactly this means. What does 1/5 plus 7/5 really mean? So we are counting fifths. So I've divided each whole. Let's say this is a whole 1. We've divided it into fifths. So I'm going to take a fifth from the first fraction, just 1/5, and that's from the first fraction. And I'm going to add 7/5. Remember that each section or cell is a fifth. So I'm going to add 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what I've done is I've taken a fifth, the blue cell, and added 7/5. Each is a fifth. So now what I have is 8/5. So if I count all, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what I have is 8/5. So what we've really done is added 2 fractions. And you've probably seen this before. I just wanted you to understand what exactly the meaning of addition of fractions is. And now this will make more sense. If the denominators are the same, you're basically counting fifths. And how many fifths do we have? It's 1 plus 7, which is 8/5. So if the denominator is a common denominator, which is the same, which means you are adding like fractions, all you're doing is, in this problem, adding fifths. How many fifths do we have? Remember, we're counting fifths, so our denominator is not 5 plus 5, it is just a 5 because we're counting fifths. And do you understand why we are adding 1 and 7? Because we were counting the number of cells, right? So this is the process that we follow for adding like fractions. So suppose we have 2/3 plus 8/3. We are counting thirds. So it's a common denominator, just like you did when you added fractions. And we're counting thirds. So how do we count? We say 2 from here, 8 from the second fraction, and that's a total of 10. And 10 what? 10 thirds. So adding like fractions is easier. So what we do here is, it's a common denominator. They're like fractions. What are we counting? 15ths. How many do we have? Just add the numerator. 7 from the first fraction, 4 from the second. What's the total number of 15ths? It is 7 plus 4, which is 11/15. Same thing here. Just make sure you have a common denominator first because you're adding like fractions, same denominator. And we're counting 12ths. How many 12ths do we have? 2 from the first fraction, 9 from the second fraction, and 7 from the third fraction. So this would be 18/12. Subtraction is the exact same way. So instead of adding 17ths, you're removing 3/17. So it is a like fraction. So the first thing you do is put a common denominator, which means you tell yourself that you're counting 17ths. And how many do we have? We have 37 from the first, but we need to remove 3 of those 17ths, which means you subtract the 3 from the 37 in the numerator, Remember, the denominator is not 17 minus 17, it's just 17 because we're counting 17ths. So that's 34 divided by 17. So that's 34 17ths. Same thing here, like fractions, 18 in the denominator. What are we counting? We're counting 18ths. 7 from the first, 13 18ths are added on because of the second fraction, but now we have to get rid of 5 of the 18ths. So it's basically doing a count. What are we counting? We're counting 18ths, so that's our common denominator. 7 plus 13 is 20. 20 minus 5 is 15. So 15 18ths. So that is 3 times 5 is 15. 3 6s are 18. Reduce it to get 5 6. Let's go back and check if all the fractions are reduced. So we have 34 17ths, and this can be reduced as well. So that's 17, and if you double up 17, what you get is 34. So the 2's cancel, and that's our final answer. Let's go back to the previous one and check. 6 times 3 is 18, and 6 times 2 is 12. The 6's cancel, so our final answer is 3/2. 11 15ths is in the lowest form. So the process of adding and subtracting like fractions is pretty straightforward. If the denominator is the same, like in any of these problems we've done so far, we just calculate the numerator by adding or subtracting depending on the problem. Now suppose we have 7/3 minus 5/3. So we're going to use order of operations, PEMDAS. So parentheses first, what does that mean? You look inside the parentheses and work on that first. It's a subtraction of like fractions. We're counting thirds, and how many thirds do we have? 7 minus 5, which is 2/3, the whole cubed. Now, what is 2/3 the whole cubed? It's equal to 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3, and that is equal to 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And that's our final answer. 5/4. Division changes to multiplication. Plus 5/6. Remember PEMDAS? PEMDAS says if you have to divide, it has to be done first, and then you worry about addition and subtraction. So that's why we looked at this, changed division to multiplication. Now, multiplication and division come before addition or subtraction. You always have to do the multiplication and division first. If anything cancels, remember we are just multiplying fractions. What is the whole idea of multiplying fractions, as we've done in chapter 2 repeatedly? It is canceling common factors and then putting the number together after we've canceled the common factors. So the 2 cancels, and we have, sorry, that's a plus, 5/6. Now let's simplify. It's 5/6 plus 5/6. Notice that we did nothing with the addition until the end. Now that we finished all the multiplication and division, we go 5/6 plus 5/6. Remember that 6 is a common denominator, which means we are counting sixths. How many sixths do we have? 5 from the first fraction and 5 from the second. When we add them together, we get 10 sixths. Now 10 sixths can be simplified further because we can cancel the 2 in the numerator with the 2 in the denominator. And we have 5/3, and that is the final answer in the reduced or the lowest terms. So again, order of operations. Multiplication first. The dot is the multiplication. 13/6 minus 5/18 times 3/1. So this is equal to 13/6 minus 5 times 3/18, and remember that this can be reduced further. Since we know 3 can cancel with the 3 in the denominator, we break down the 18 in terms of 3. So as a multiple of 3, 3 times 6 is 18. Cancel the common factors. Remember, we are doing the multiplication before the subtraction. We completely multiplied this entire expression, reduced it to the lowest terms by cancelling common factors, and only then do we do subtraction. So 13 minus 5/6. We're counting sixths, so denominator is 6 minus, so that's 13 minus 5. 13 minus 5 is 8/6, and clearly this can be reduced further. Always when you look at your final answer, make sure it's reduced completely before you circle it and make it a final answer. So we know 2 is a common factor. So we wrote down the 8 as a multiple of 2, wrote down the 6 as a multiple of 2, and canceled the common factors, and that is our final answer.